Hello people of the world, so today's giveaway is The Giver. I've been meaning to clear some books from my shelf, and there are some pretty interesting finds. That being said, is this channel just some elaborate scheme for me to do my part in some house cleaning?
Yes, guys.
Please help me save the planet, because I do not want to throw these babies away. If you're interested in this book, please fill in the form in the description box below, and you'll probably have a chance to get this A Little Giver. But if it doesn't tickle your fancy, there are also other available options in the G World bookstore on Instagram. So feel free to check that out and see if there's anything you would like to purchase. Now, let's get into the February wrap-up. Goodbye! The first book I read in February is The Crying Book by Heather Christle. And honestly, I shouldn't be surprised that this book should be about crying, but I kind of was, because it's literally about crying. It's like when you walk into the kitchen looking for milk, but then you find out it expired, but then you still think, oh, nah, like I'll still be able to drink this, I won't feel sick, and then you do. And then you still have the audacity to be surprised. So that was me with this book. It's literally about crying. It's a whole anecdote of the writer's experience on how she cries, as well as scientific facts or the history in crying. Literally even down to the point of who invented crying. I would say that this book is very uniquely written. I've never seen a format like this. It's basically slam poetry, but written in a non-fiction sense. So I haven't really been accustomed to that kind of style, but it was very enjoyable in that sense because it's something new for me to read. But I don't really have much to say. At the end of the day, there's not really any moral because it's literally just facts and stories about what the author went through. But I would say it's kind of lackluster in the sense where the theme was not that cohesive, because at one point it's like you're reading an essay, but then later on it's a whole anecdote of the writer's experience in crying, and you're thinking, oh, did we just jump into a memoir? What's happening? So I would say because of that, since this was already a new style for me, seeing that jump between different themes and different structures of writing within the book made me a little bit confused and kind of just wanted to finish the book. So I would rate this book around a 3.5 out of 5, deducting extra points because I didn't cry at all. Not even a single tear. I couldn't even squeeze that out. So it's kind of ironic if you think about it. The second book I read in February is The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. To commemorate the great day that is Valentine's Day. This book is a little meet-cute between a professor called Adam and a PhD student called Olivia. They meet up in the STEM field, sparks fly, except, in reality, you could get a restraining order. The premise is that the student Olivia wants to convince her best friend, who's in love with her ex, that she already fell out of love with him. And what do you do if you're a sane person? Do you communicate? No, if you're in a young adult fiction, what you have to do is find the next stranger you see and kiss him. Kiss him on the lips. Unconsensually. And what do you do if that person you kissed was actually your professor? Yeah, no, even that sentence was... And what should you do if a random person in the corridor kissed you? Do you report them? No. Because if you're a cute main character, then obviously it's gonna be so quirky and you're gonna fall in love with them. And yes, this whole premise is between a professor and a student. Now, to be fair, they did age up the people because the professor is around his mid-30s and Olivia is around 28 years old. So the age gap in that sense is small, but isn't it kind of weird though? Like, why does it have to be in a university? Why does he have to be a professor? Couldn't he at least be a teaching assistant? No, since the stakes are high in this book, then obviously having the professor as the love interest would make it all the more interesting, if you will. And to be fair, they did set up in the beginning that they already kind of knew each other and that the professor already kind of liked Olivia. But I don't think that really justifies anything. I mean, even if you like them, you would find it weird, right? If they just randomly come up to you and kiss you. I don't know. Is it just me? Am I not the normal one? Is this actually realistic? I mean, you could go ahead and tell me, but I honestly don't think so. But obviously, it's a fiction novel. And I did think it was really cute. At the end of the day, the whole book was not as harassy as the premise said it to be. It was very lovely and a warm, fuzzy read. So I did enjoy the interactions between the two characters, and it was overall just fun. It wasn't really something, it wasn't amazing literature where you're just like, oh yeah, I've never seen this love story before. No, I've seen this millions of times in different types of settings, but it's always the same. But if you're into the, broody kind of guy plus the sunshiny girl trope, then this book is pretty fun. What I found weird though about this book is that all of them acted like they were not in their late 20s or 30s. No, they acted like they were 15. And by 15, I mean like sometimes just the dialogue is something I hear from my high school. None of them are well versed in the art of communication. There is always unnecessary misunderstanding where, for instance, sometimes the professor would pass by the girl when she's talking about him and she would just be like,
oh no, what if he thinks I'm weird? Or what if he thinks that? Or what if he does this? Or what if I do that?
I mean, you don't have to do that. You don't have to overthink that much. And that's coming from me because I overthink everything. Or the one time when the best friend would try to convince Olivia to tell Adam, the professor, how she really feels about him. But she would always be like, oh no, I can't. What if it will ruin our friendship? What if it's going to ruin what we have right now? Or it's just me, I'm not really that special. First of all, girl, come on. Like, were you even friends in the first place? This whole book is just both of you crushing on each other. Are you really losing anything? And the whole premise is you guys fake dating. I mean, your friendship was weird in the first place. So yeah, like the whole book would have that kind of dialogue, and at some points I did forget that she was 28 because she sounded 10 years younger. Younger than I am, probably. So all in all, I would have rated this book a 3 because, it's not really anything special in my opinion. It's a book that I've seen hundreds of times, but it still successfully made me feel that fuzzy feeling, and it was genuinely really cute regardless, having that kind of dynamic between the two characters. And I said I would have rated it a 3. Because here's the little twist, the little fun plot twist nobody would have expected. So get ready, guys, okay? I do not mean to crush any of your images if you are a fan, but this book is a Star Wars fanfiction.
No, I am your
fanfiction.
It's not true. That's impossible.
Yup. I have no qualms with fanfiction being turned into an actual book. You've seen it hundreds of times with The City of Bones or 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know if 50 Shades of Grey was a really good example, but you get what I mean. It happens, and it's a normal thing, and if it's executed well, then why not? And I honestly think The Love Hypothesis did do it well. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it was just really interesting. The professor is literally called Adam. Adam Driver, the guy most well known for his angry performance in The Marriage Story.
You're back to being a hack!
It is literally based off of Kylo Ren from Star Wars, and Olivia is Rey. And looking back, you could just smell the fanfiction. You could just see the whole skeleton in place. Yes, I have read a few, and the flow is exactly what you see in fanfiction. And looking back, just looking at all of the chapters again, I'm just like, this is the formula for a fanfiction flow. And this is why we didn't have any context, or we didn't need any context set up in the first place. They're already in love with each other in the very beginning, in the prologue. Because if you already know the characters from Star Wars, you don't really need to set any premise at all. You wouldn't need that build-up. Because you already know them, you can just skip all the context and just enjoy all of the romance and the fluff that you desperately want from those characters. So it skips all of that. It skips the whole context and the build-up, and it kind of just leaves the people who didn't watch Star Wars to just third wheel through all of that, including me. Yes, I did not watch Star Wars. This is my only memory of the Star Wars franchise now. A romance fanfiction. Anyways, because of that, I'm obviously going to bump this book into a 4. I mean, how could you not? And I would have probably bumped it up even more if I saw a Chewbacca somewhere. You know, it could be the school mascot. I don't know. Something where I would have been able to relate to it as a non-Star Wars reader. Or maybe I would have given it a 5 if I actually watched Star Wars. So the third book I read in February is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, my personal favorite read of the month. Piranesi is about the scientist called Piranesi, and it's about his life in this labyrinth and how he adapts around it as the only human. He does get accompanied with other humans, such as who he calls the Other, as well as a few skeletons of human bodies, so that's a fun little circle. He documents his life in the labyrinth in such extreme detail, down to its crevices, and it's so intricate. So I thought the world building was just amazing in this book. You get a lot of vivid explanations that just helps you imagine what the labyrinth is, because it's such a complicated setting if you're going to literally be in the maze. He also documents his thoughts on life and whether there are other people like him, considering he's the only human. And I just really like the tone and how he documented his stories, because you could genuinely see the fascination of the world. Sometimes it even breaks the fourth wall, because it's like, maybe you are one human or something like that. So that was just really fun. You can't help but feel fond of Piranesi, because you could just see the dynamic tone in his voice and how he genuinely wants to see other humans or learn about the world. Show him a new world, if you will. But what was really intriguing to me in this whole book, spoiler alert, just in case, I don't really know if it's a spoiler, but I want to put that out there, is that there is a genre that you wouldn't know is part of this book until you reach the midway point, or less than. You know, at the beginning, even down to the cover of the book, you would believe that this book is a historical fiction, maybe something about mythology. But then later, when you look at the entries of his journals, you see that the date is in 2012. And you're like, is this just a meta Greek play, or a simulation? Like, I wouldn't know, but you get a little bit suspicious, especially with the language they use in this book. Piranesi talks in such old English. Can you imagine if someone talked like that in 2012? Alas, sir, yon spirit, did thee receiveth the new iPhone? Alas, straight-looking green brother, art thee wearing Yeezys? So that's when the story starts to unravel, and you start to see, like, the suspicious details of the whole story, and more mysterious characters come in. And it's just really funny to see the contrast when those characters come in, because that's when Piranesi discovers swearing, or, you know, just modern slang. Like, oh, dude, what the F? Oh, shiz, that'd be crazy. You know, like, that kind of thing. And you just hear Piranesi is just like, what the heck? What is this? It's like that movie of Hugh Jackman time traveling as a medieval guy to the present day. Has anybody watched that movie? That's why I really like Piranesi, because Piranesi is like a parallel of you as the reader. You kind of go in blind at the same time, and you get the same information at the same time. So that's why it's so easy to empathize with Piranesi. I would give this book a 4.5 out of 5, just because I really, really love the book and its world building. It's something that just allows you to explore and have a breath of fresh air. In that sense, it's a very peaceful read, even though there's a lot of information you have to take in to imagine the details. The reason why it's a half point away from 5 is just because of how the climax of the story was executed. It was not really satisfying to me. Essentially, this scene is a battle between Piranesi and the main villain. So the stakes are high in that scene, but the payoff was just underwhelming. Like, I even glossed over that whole scene, and I didn't even know that the battle was done. So I had to, like, go back a page just to be like, oh, is it over? I did not see that. Hey, help us! Somebody's trying to kill us!
2 hours later.
Oh boy, it's awfully quiet right now. Oh my gosh! What the heck happened? You're too late, dude. He's literally dead. What? But I wasn't out of it for that long. You missed the entire fight, and it's already been 5 years. He's literally grown a beard and a mustache. Wait, then, if he's still growing a beard and a mustache, doesn't that mean he's still alive? So, the 4th book I read is My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. Let me just search that up really quickly. Oyinkan Braithwaite. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that surname. I'm not really sure. This book is in the perspective of the main character, Corede, and her sister, Ayula, who's the serial killer of this book. And the premise is that they were trying to hide the dead body of Ayula's boyfriend. But it's not the first time it happened. Every time Ayula murders her boyfriend, she would say something like that the boyfriend is abusive or he was threatening to kill her, so it was merely out of self-defense, even though it has happened multiple times. So the plot focuses on how Ayula gets away from those murders and how there are double standards in the criminal system because of how easy it was for Ayula to get away from her crimes because of her good looks and her charisma. Basically, she's the most beautiful girl of the town. She can get away with anything, and it's very easy for her to manipulate men who fall in love with her. There's also subplots like how Corede's crush at work fell in love with Ayula and how that created a strain between their family relationship. And I especially liked how they emphasized on sisterhood throughout the whole story because I really enjoy reading books about the themes of family and sisterhood and how far you would go for somebody you would love, whether you choose between your family or someone you have a crush on or someone you're romantically interested in. Or in this case, whether you pick a serial killer or a crush. So maybe the moral of the story is not applicable in this sense. I also love the theme on feminism and the double standards in society, whether that be about men objectifying and sexualizing young women, or the double standards that the criminal system has towards men. It's written in a way that's not all in your face about it. It's just such a nuanced story, and you just see it for what it is, and you see that there are some harsh realities that this book portrays. There's also a lot of suspense and thrill in terms of how they hide the crime or what exactly they'll do. So it was very hard for me to put the book down because you just want to see, does she get away with it? Is she gonna kill somebody else? You know, it's really fun, very fast paced, which I really liked. I would give this book a 4 out of 5 because of the thrill and the whole fast paced structure of the book, including the themes on family. So it was such a well developed plot that included so many themes, yet it's not confusing. The reason why this book is a mark away from 5 is because as much as I like the family themes in this book, the characters were very one-dimensional and it was very hard for you to sympathize with them. They had their flaws and they were very complicated people, which is why you could understand where they're coming from, but you can't root for them. They're not really likable characters in that sense. So that's why it's not a really enjoyable book if you're looking in the characters, persona, or way of thinking. The only reason I would like the book, or why I would read it in the first place, is because of the premise of the serial killings and how complicated family relationships and society can be. The final book that I read in February is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. So I thought that fanfiction was really going for it this year, because I read this after The Love Hypothesis, so I was thinking, is this going to be about an Egyptian queen falling in love with a dead man? Well, why does it sound like a readable plot? But no, unfortunately, it's not as interesting as that. It's about a couple called Cleo and Frank and their struggles and journey in this turbulent marriage that they had at the spur of the moment. It doesn't only center on their marriage, but it also focuses on the side characters in their life that were affected by the marriage or who affected the marriage as well. So the chapters don't only have Cleo and Frank's perspectives, but it has the perspective of many other characters that you're going to explore the whole picture from. This book has its own fair share of trigger warnings, just to let you know. It has mentions of suicide, drug use, and self-harm. This book is honestly the most chaotic read I've read for the month, and all the characters were so flawed in their own ways and had their own issues. This book is more like a character analysis rather than a plot, I would say. There wasn't really a goal for this story because you just look into how characters deal with certain problems in marriage or how people enjoy marriage. You see the realistic problems of people when they go through issues like infidelity, depression, family trauma, all of this, and how it translates to your relationships. There's also a wide diversity of characters that I haven't seen in the book in a while because they have a whole cast of characters in terms of their gender, sexuality, race, disability. It's very inclusive in that sense. But the book does a good job to show them in such a multidimensional perspective where they're not only defined by their race or their sexuality or disability. They have their own flaws and they're very nuanced. And you see them for who they are as a whole rather than just one part of their identity. Everybody in this book is different. Everybody had their flaws, and there wasn't really a moral of the story because, in life, it's not as straightforward as it is in the book. The book kind of ended in a way where there's not really any conclusive moral to the story. It's kind of just life moves on. Sometimes people are great and sometimes they're terrible. And sometimes people will never change, but it doesn't mean life is going to end. There's always going to be continuity. People are going to move on regardless of what happens. And there's just going to be a whole lot of growth in that process. It's also such an intimate book. Sometimes I feel like I'm eavesdropping in somebody's conversation that I definitely do not want to be a part of. You see all of the details in a character's arguments and their flaws and their mistakes, and you're just like, am I supposed to be here? It's like you're watching your friend who's dating their boyfriend and you're over at their house, but then they're arguing and kind of forget that you're there. And you want to leave, but they won't let you leave. You're the worst thing that ever happened to me. I hate you. I wish you were dead. Maybe I should just leave. What? But you just got here. Yeah, and you still have to see me cheat on him in chapter 7. Wait, what? Then you have to see me flirt with another woman because my wife is somebody I cannot trust at all. Wait, what? I don't want to see any of that. Hey!
You chose to read this book and you're gonna stay here and you're gonna suffer.
Oh, but if you need a break from all of that, you could just also look at chapter 15. It's just about my buddy Santiago opening up a restaurant. I also don't really want to be here. I would give this book a 3.5 out of 5. I think Coco Mellors did a great job in just showing how multidimensional people could be and how everyone has their flaws. It makes them very fleshed out and very complex, as we all are, and it's just relatable in that sense. You just know that they're human. Considering that it's also her debut book, it it's just done well. I haven't seen characters analyzed in this degree, which I found very fascinating. But as much as the book tried to make them relatable and flawed, I also didn't like them. I didn't like any of the characters. They were obnoxious. They were just terrible people. I didn't like them at all. There was only that one guy called Santiago who I liked in this book. He was just purely wholesome. I loved him. But everybody else could just, like, I don't know, just do not be near me. A lot of these characters were around the age of 40 or 50, except for Cleo, who's in her mid-20s, and Frank's younger sister, who's like 19. But all of them acted like they were 19. In terms of how they argued, it was just so infuriating. None of them could have a normal conversation or a discussion in their problems. It was just all personal attack after attack. And that just made me so mad. I'm just like, y'all are 40. You could even have that kind of immaturity at that age? It explains a lot, I guess. They were also crackheads or complain a lot about their life. And I'm just like, I get it, okay? Like, yeah, your life kind of sucks and you like drugs and you like partying. You like to do all that. Okay, can we move on? Like, life moves on. That's the moral, right? Like, all of them had their own problems, like how someone's into drugs or somebody couldn't make it as an artist, but they project those problems to everybody, and they all argue in the same way. They all are just like, you are not there for me. You suck. I hate you. So much unnecessary misunderstanding as well. And all of them use that communication technique, whether it be towards their mom, their dad, friend, sibling, girlfriend, boyfriend, dog, sugar glider, everybody. Like, it's just, there is no diversity in how these characters communicate, and it gets a little bit frustrating. And the ending, okay, I couldn't feel happy for any of the characters. I really can't, because they would find their happipness in the expense of others sometimes, and that just gets to me a lot. Like, I cannot feel happy for you. So the ending was it just left me mad, and I guess in some ways a little bit bittersweet as well, because it's kind of just like a departure for some people's relationships. So in that way, it was bittersweet. But I was also like, yeah, I don't really care, because you went to this point hurting other people. And yeah, I do not want to be friends with you. Nothing in their journey felt rewarding to me, but it did feel bittersweet. And I don't know if that's the point that Mellors wanted, but it was just personally how I felt as I ended the book. Well, that's all the books that I read in February. I hope you enjoyed this little wrap up. Next month, I'll be reading Red, White, and Blue, People We Meet on Vacation, It Ends With Us, and other books I can manage to fit in. If you like this video, give us a little thumbs up and make sure to subscribe, because you need to make sure to have your eggs for breakfast as you have my notification for a new video. Until then, stay tuned. Bye bye.